You're listening to the Good Old Boys Fantasy Football Podcast. Now here's your hosts, Kevin, Derek, and Alex.
All right, and welcome in, ladies and gentlemen, to another episode of the Good Old Boys Fantasy Football Podcast. I am Derek, and joined, as always, by your co-hosts, Kevin and Alex. Gentlemen, how are we doing tonight?
Doing good, right? We're the cusp of the draft. We are getting really no information about these players, which is a good thing. As far as they're keeping their nose clean, you're not having any kind of 11th hour disturbance to the force, if you will. If anything, you know, we continue to be further past the Jalen Carter incident, so you start to see him creeping back up draft boards. Other than that, getting ready for some playoff hockey as they wind down the regular season. The NBA has now concluded their regular season, and we are getting ready for some playoff basketball, if that's your thing. And we had the Masters last weekend. Watch out for the trees. But yeah, I mean, honestly, it was good. Got to spend the weekend with the family over Easter and hang out and, you know, see everybody and watch the kids hunt for Easter eggs and, you know, all that fun parent stuff that you get to do. So it's good stuff, man. How are you guys?
I'm good. You can blame me for our tardiness tonight because of what Kevin was talking about. The NHL regular season is winding down as we record this, and as we show you this now, the Avs are locked in a dogfight with Edmonton. And I was watching that game and kind of lost track of time. So it took me, I was a little bit tardy getting to to my computer fired up and everything. So, heck of a hockey game. Hopefully we don't see the Oilers in the playoffs because holy crap, are they scary. But yeah, it was fun to watch the Masters, a weather impacted Masters, to see John Rahm kind of chase down Brooks Koepka and come away with that one. And, you know, kind of all is right in the golf world, if you believe in such things. That
did he chase or did Koepka choke?
No, that's fair. I mean,
I'm just asking, what's your opinion on that?
I think he chased him down. I think it's a little bit of column A, a little bit of column B. That Rahm was playing some really good golf there at the end, and Koepka wasn't. And that's a recipe for losing a green jacket and winning a green jacket. So that was an interesting tournament. As you guys all know, down here where I am, there was a kid from this area, Sam Bennett, the amateur golfer, who was making waves there in the first couple of rounds. Kind of fell back to earth there in the final two rounds, but I say fell back to earth. He shot 2 over each of those 2 rounds, so like he was a heck of a story. And ended up finishing in the top 20 for the Masters. So, like,
if I could go to Augusta and shoot over any time in my life, I don't care whether it's for peanuts or $6 million. I'm gonna walk away happy as a clam, dude. Like,
I'll put it this way: I wouldn't even be 2 over after the first hole. Like, I probably couldn't even get through a hole 2 over. Yeah, he did. That was a very special thing to watch, and looking forward to the actual NFL draft as we've done our mock draft, our first mock of the year.
Yeah, the first mock is in the books, and we're going to run through that tonight. So lots and lots of fun. It's in the books for us, yet to be written for everybody watching and listening yet, but we'll bring you into the fold on that one here very quickly. Real quick, right? Like, you know, touched on a lot of the playoffs starting. The one thing that I don't understand about, you know, especially the NBA is you take 82 games to play to whittle this down, and all you do is eliminate 10 teams to start your playoffs. Like, that's it. 2/3 of the league makes it into the playoffs. Like, that's, I understand it's a money thing, but at the same time, like, it took you 82 games to whittle down 10 teams.
If we're being brutally honest about the economic side of the NBA, they have 82 games because 30 of those games have to go and fund the WNBA.
Oh yeah, for sure. That's
their
model.
The game, right?
No,
like,
that's their model. That's the
model, and that's what they've done, and they're the reason that the WNBA is largely still intact because they don't have the global sponsorship that the NBA does. They don't have the sponsorship inside the arenas. It is in large part being funded by the NBA because there's, ESPN might carry some of those games, but it's not ratings, it's not crowd attendance, it's not sponsorships. It is the NBA saying, hey, we want to support your product, and we are doing so by, supplying, ex capita for that league to continue. And right, wrong, or different. It's just the economics of it. That's why there's 82 games.
And realistically, to the 10 game thing, I mean, that's actually, or the 10 teams making the playoffs in each conference, that's actually born, and you can fight me on this if you want, but that's actually born from Bill Simmons, who had the idea of what he called the Fun as Hell tournament. And that was like a midseason tournament style to capitalize on what people get with March Madness, right? Like that one game tournament that you just move on, right? And so the NBA kind of adopted that and put in this one game winner go home situation. It doesn't work like March Madness because we have an 82 game sample size.
It did in their bubble, right? When they were in the bubble in kind of the shortened season, like that part was exciting. It was a little bit more of a sprint. Part of it was because we didn't really have jack squat else going on, right? The country
had nothing else to watch
in full-fledged, don't breathe mode. But it is entertainment. It was a bit of a break. It was, whatever. And that part was fun. I haven't watched that play-in game since 2020.
Yeah.
Like it's just not. I just don't find it entertaining anymore.
It's not appealing to me. Yeah.
So anyway, now that we kind of bashed on that one, let's go ahead and
it's a matter of preference, right? Like the college game's cool because it's less ISO, right? It is a team sport still. Well, the NBA is which team's superstars can outperform the other team's superstars, and players in large part 3, in some cases 4, but it's 3 or 4 through 7 are just out there to take up space on a court. And then it's just dominated by the top 1 or 2 guys, just pounding the ball into the hardwood for 2 hours. Like that's just not entertainment to me.
Well, even then, it's not even necessarily pounding it. And you see a lot of, the acrobatics that we used to see when we grew up, kind of watching that, where at the rim, guys finishing at the hoops, things like that. It's drive it in and kick it out and let somebody launch a 3, and you see, 30 3-pointers, 40 3-pointers shot throughout the course of a game, where if you could take an entire night throughout the league and you probably wouldn't have seen 30 3-point attempts the entire time back in the 90s when we were kind of seeing that play out there. But
blame that on Steve Kerr and the Warriors.
There you go. Yeah, probably.
They're laughing all the way to the bank. With
yeah. Yes. I mean, they got their championships out of it for sure. But I think in a large way, they kind of bastardized the enjoyment of watching basketball, because it is a dunk, a free throw, or a 3-point shot. Like there is no such thing as a mid-range game anymore.
Oh, and
you don't have, the pick and roll games, or really the pick and pop game is really not quite as tight as it was, right? Like you're either rolling or you're throwing it back to the corner for someone to take another 3. Like, I could spend, I'm sure we all could. We could spend an hour talking about how that game is just dwindling because of analytics. In the same way that it's trying to help baseball, it's trying to help football in some ways. And in basketball, I get it's all about winning, right? That's what their goal is, to win. It's not necessarily supposed to be what we always find enjoyable, but good Lord. I miss watching the Pistons and the Knicks just beat the crap out of each other for a chance to play the Celtics or the Bulls. Like I just miss that.
Right. Absolutely. Well, let's go ahead and move on into football then. And there was some news that happened, right? The Odell Beckham Jr. is no longer a free agent. Found his way onto the Baltimore Ravens for a monster deal. I actually couldn't believe the numbers when I saw that one all come out there, but signed for a deal like up to $18 million for a 1-year deal. 15 million of it is guaranteed, I do believe. From the sounds and reports of it, Lamar Jackson actively recruiting OBJ to come play in Baltimore, and it leaves all the rest of us kind of scratching our heads going, what is truly going on behind the scenes in Baltimore there? If you've got, Lamar saying that he requested a trade long before the Ravens did the non-exclusive tag on him. He's still on an exclusive tag. No deal's been finalized there. And the fact that he's out there actively recruiting, if those reports are true, actively recruiting players to come play in Baltimore there. What are our thoughts on this?
I am shocked. And mainly I'm shocked because what type of sell job did Monken and Lamar and Harbaugh do for OBJ? Like, it was very interesting. You had the Jets rumored, right? You had the Cowboys rumored at one point. You had, some other teams pop up in the Rams. The Rams didn't want to see him go, but last year with that torn ACL, they didn't really have a choice. Like, you can't hold that roster spot for a guy that would have been a free agent anyway.
Right.
So I'm surprised it's the Ravens, but if that's what the step was, or part of the bargaining chip for Lamar to come back to the table and try and get that secured for them, good on them for going out and getting it done. Right. That's what you can say. I still think he's going to end up with somewhere in that neighborhood of, I think 70 catches is the ceiling. I think we're probably going to see something like 62 catches for 850 yards and 4 touchdowns.
Yeah.
Like that's their wide receiver one.
Right.
It's not fantasy relevant, guys. Like, I don't care. I might care a little bit more if it was in a better spot, but with it being Baltimore, I don't care. He is a depth piece, a 4th receiver on your team, and I am not going to deal with the headache. Like, because of this landing spot, as much as I like OBJ and find him extremely entertaining, and yes, he is a very talented football player, I'm not going to fart with this. I'm just not going to mess with it. So I have moved him over in the will not draft list, and I welcome either one of you or the other 9 members in our league. Go ahead and soak him up, and I will gladly get burned by him for a week for you to suffer a headache for the remaining 13 weeks of the regular season.
Yeah, I don't think that this makes Baltimore that much more dangerous, right? Like, it just doesn't make, I don't know, it doesn't make any sense to me of why. Like, there's part of me that thinks that this might have been the only offer that OBJ had, right? Like, it could be. Like, it just doesn't make any sense. It's a heck of an
offer. If that's the only one.
It's a great offer. No, yeah, fantastic. It's a fantastic offer. But at the same point, like, right. But at the same point, like, I don't understand it. It's not going to turn this run first offense that has 9 million running backs into this air raid offense. Like, he doesn't. It just doesn't make. I don't get it. Kevin, I'm with you on the.
The change in offensive coordinator will help with that, right? Like, Todd Monken did not get brought in to this Baltimore organization to run the ball 58% of the time. Like, you will see those numbers at least try and flip through the first 6 weeks of the season as they try and develop this new offensive identity. But I don't think Lamar can handle that workload. I do not think that he is the type of quarterback that you are going to want to design and program in somewhere in the neighborhood of 55 to 58% passing plays. Like, you have to keep this offense balanced or leaned towards the run because you just don't have the offensive skill set around you.
Right.
OBJ, Mark Andrews, and
Rashad Bateman.
I mean, Bateman's got to stay healthy, but he has not looked nearly the player in the pros that he was at Minnesota. Injuries didn't help him or haven't helped him thus far. Injuries haven't helped OBJ. And last season, injuries didn't help Mark Andrews, right? So this is a team that is health averse.
Yeah.
And you're trying to piecemeal it together to make it look good. Their strongest skill set is a zone run or a RPO, and let Lamar or J.K. Dobbins try and find the hole and gash a team for 6 yards a clip. Like that is still the strength of this team, and I don't think that just adding that piece or even 2 or 3 pieces is going to flip that as much as Todd is going to try and do with the offense.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Actually, I don't know that I've got really anything to add on that. I think you hit that pretty darn good there. Any other thoughts on any of the other news out there coming through the NFL lately?
It's been really quiet, right? I mean, there really hasn't been a whole heck of a lot. I think teams have stayed buttoned up for the draft. I think they're waiting to see what draft night brings to them here in a couple weeks, and then they will go out with the remaining salary cap that they have and try and plug a few holes if the draft board doesn't fall to them appropriately. But there's still some big time running backs out there. I mean, Kareem Hunt, Leonard Fournette, Zeke Elliott, and not that they're world-changing running backs at this point in their careers, but they're solid veteran pieces, right? They are solid guys that you could bring in and help either teach or, carry the workload for a few weeks as these younger guys get up to speed. So it'll be interesting to see where some of these guys do land, because I think they will all find homes when it's said and done with. I don't think that Fournette, Kareem Hunt, and Zeke, specifically those 3, are going to be left off a roster this season.
I would agree with you on that. You've also got 2 veteran running backs that have had very good fantasy presence over the last few years. We're going to have to see how some of the legal things play out with them over this offseason as well. And of course, I'm talking about Joe Mixon and Alvin Kamara, both of which, have some off the field issues that we'll see how that plays out. Both of those things we should see wrapped up here and have an idea of, hopefully before fantasy drafts start happening there, with some of these proceedings yet to unfold here. But we'll keep an eye and ear out on that and see how those come into play. But there could be 2 potential openings there as well, and I think that's something to keep an eye on, as well as what do those teams do in the draft. Really will kind of show their hand a little bit on how concerned they are for some of those potential issues coming down the pike there as well. So something certainly worth keeping an eye on. Gentlemen, any other thoughts on news? Are we ready to start mocking it up?
Mock away.
Mock drafting. All righty. So it's the first round mock draft 1.0. And we're going to rock and roll this one. Y'all have tuned in the past, know how we do this one. First mock draft, we're going to rotate it around. So each one of us took a team, playing GM for that particular team, rotate it through, and you're making the picks. No trades are allowed in this one here. So you got to make the pick as the board lies, as the draft picks sit. We'll get into some of the trade mocks coming up here in some future episodes here. But before we make that first pick here, make sure that you're doing us a favor. Head over to the YouTube channel, click that subscribe button, ring that bell. Make sure that you're getting all the player profile videos that we've got coming up. We've got several of those player profile videos already out there, several more left to drop before the draft. So make sure that you're getting our thoughts on individual players as we head in towards the actual draft, and set you up for some dynasty success here down the road. Kevin, you are on the clock as the Carolina Panthers here, and you've got the first selection. Which way we going?
Dun, 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 dun. With the first pick, the Carolina Panthers will select C.J. Stroud, quarterback, Ohio State University.
The Ohio State University.
No, it's not the. No, it's the national champs. It is Ohio State. I do think that's probably the best fit for Carolina here. I like the fact that he's a little bit bigger, stands a little bit taller than oh my goodness, Bryce Young. Thank you. Excuse me. Oh my gosh, stands a little bit taller than Bryce Young. With that 6'4" frame, can make all the throws. I think he needs to be a little bit more mobile, but he fills the immediate need for Carolina, and they have their quarterback of the future in C.J. Stroud.
That was one of those that when I saw that one pop up, because right about the time we started doing this, I saw some of the futures flip for a first pick where Bryce Young actually pulled back ahead of C.J. Stroud in there. So I was curious when we were looking at if that was going to influence the selection there at all or not. But sounds like you had your thought process pretty sound there, Alex. That moves you and the Houston Texans here to pick number 2.
Yeah, the Houston Texans will select Bryce Young, quarterback out of the University of Alabama. Realistically, if Bryce Young goes first, I think they go Stroud. If Stroud goes first, I think they go Bryce Young. I think that the Texans are happy either way. Yeah,
and especially since they don't have to maneuver around or really kind of jockey for position, and they'll just let whoever falls in their lap be their QB of the future. I can absolutely agree with that one.
Yep.
That's going to move the Arizona Cardinals onto the clock here. They've got the 3rd overall pick. They've got several needs all across the board there in what feels like kind of a throwaway year here for the Cardinals with their quarterback having the ACL. Who knows if he's going to truly be back for the start of the season or this is going to be something that we'll see him partway through it. But they do have a lot of holes all over the place. That's why they get a pick 3rd overall. And they are going to stay on the defensive side of the ball here. They're going to take Will Anderson Jr. with the 3rd overall pick, the edge rusher out of Alabama. This is a guy that can certainly help bolster their defense and help bring some things around for them. And I feel pretty confident in calling Will Anderson to AZ on this one.
For the record, I think Arizona trades this pick. I think that there will be a suitor after those first 2 quarterbacks. If it doesn't get done ahead of draft night, it gets done on draft night. But I don't think that Arizona is picking at the number 3 slot. And if they are, I think they might be asking too much to move out of that 3rd selection.
Well, it wouldn't surprise me if you see the Colts move up the 1 spot to make sure they get their guy and there isn't a team that comes up there. And so for them to fall back and they get an extra pick or they get an extra player's compensation, I think you're right. I think they would absolutely do that. There's also some quarterback needy teams a little bit towards those later single-digit picks. I could absolutely see that one come into play as well. I like that call. All right, Kevin, that moves you and the Colts onto the clock here with the 4th pick.
The Colts select Will Levis, quarterback out of Kentucky. A little bit of thought process behind this. I think that they went with a guy who has a little bit higher floor to start his NFL career. I think the Colts still believe that they can, win now or come closer, especially in that division, right? Come closer from, finishing 3rd in that division to being able to jump up to 1st and get a playoff game out of this. They've tried the veteran quarterback route here the past couple seasons, but they all have that big frame, right? Will Levis is a tall guy, big guy, can withstand some NFL punishment and is a little bit more mobile than people give him credit for. So not the flashy option that Richardson is, but I do think Will Levis will have a little bit less development necessary to get acclimated to the NFL game and be able to start a touch sooner.
Gotcha. And Alex, I know you had some notes on that one when you
did, yeah. And I think, and hearing Kevin's reasoning, and obviously when we did this, we weren't talking to each other. We decided to save that for this. But I did, I in hearing Kevin's reasoning, I think that Richardson is attractive, but to the point where Levis is safer, and the Colts, if we know anything about them, they'll take the sure thing. And so I like Levis there. I wouldn't be surprised though. Going back to the point that I made with Arizona trading out of that, is that whatever team trades up into 3 gets Anthony Richardson, and that Levis is still there for the Colts at 4 if they decide not to move.
Yeah, I could see that one as well. It wouldn't surprise me, though, to see the Colts go with the Richardson route, just from the standpoint Shane Steichen just came over as, he's coming over as the head coach, coming from Philadelphia, working with a true dual threat quarterback in Jalen Hurts there, in a quarterback that, seemingly, a couple of years ago had very similar development, a development path needed as what Richardson's kind of projecting out here as well. So wouldn't surprise me if they go that route either, but I do like the Levis call and I do like the logic behind that one. Alex, that puts you on the clock with the Seahawks.
So the Seahawks, I have them taking Jalen Carter out of Georgia. I think that all of the pre-draft stuff settles down. I think that the Seahawks need to fill that need. I think that Jalen Carter is best available. And honestly, if it weren't for the bevy of teams that need quarterback ahead, he could be the number 1 overall pick, right? I'll take Jalen Carter there for the Seattle Seahawks.
Okay. I like it. So this next pick, this puts Detroit on the clock here at 6. This next pick, all of this was done before we got the news today that Jeff Okudah is leaving Detroit. And we were talking before we went on air that had we known that information, this pick would have been very different here. But we're not going to change that now. So we're going to go with the pick as it was made. And the Detroit Lions are going to work on that defensive side of the ball there. They're going to take a little bit of help on that defensive line, a little bit of an edge rusher in Tyree Wilson, a guy to match with Aiden Hutchinson here and really kind of get a really, really good 1-2 punch, try and put some quarterback pressure on, try and make some things happen along the defensive line there. Any thoughts on this one?
I like the pick. I think the one thing that it doesn't help a great deal on is their run defense, and that's where the Lions got gashed last year. So we'll see what else they do in the draft. But I do like the pick, right? You have to be able to stop the other team's quarterback, and the combination of Hutchinson and Tyree Wilson, I think is a good start in being able to do that up front.
All righty. Kevin, that puts you and the Raiders on the pick with the 7th overall pick here.
I have the Raiders going with Anthony Richardson. I think that this is maybe not a luxury pick because the Raiders do have a lot of holes to fill in, but this is something that they just couldn't pass up, right? Obviously, with no trades and him falling down the board, how could you not want to be able to bring him in, develop him while you have Jimmy G holding the reins here for a couple seasons? If G gets knocked up, which he has, or dinged up, knocked up, you guys know what I mean, which he has the past couple seasons, then you get Richardson in there and you see what the kid has. So I think that this is a opportunity for the Raiders to be able to take their guy of the future, develop him as long as Jimmy G stays healthy. And if not, we're going to see him get thrown in a division that's pretty ripe with pass rushers. So it's going to be interesting here to begin with. But the note here is he is unlike anything else in the AFC West. Right? Mahomes he's mobile, right? Mahomes can scamper, but he's not dual threat. Kind of the same thing in LA with
Herbert,
and
Russ.
I'm stumbling bumbling all over myself tonight. I'm sorry. And then Russ, who should act more like a dual threat quarterback, but his people don't want him to run as much.
So yeah.
Good people.
Yeah, we'll see how that one comes to play there.
Tell you the 80,000 people that show up to whatever the hell they're calling Mile High this year, those people want him to run a little bit more.
Right.
Oh yes.
The very interesting thing too, when I first saw this pick and saw that, I'm like, man, Josh McDaniels can't get away from a mobile quarterback from the University of Florida. Like,
he loves him some University of Florida action.
Exactly. All right, Alex, that moves you and the Atlanta Falcons at pick number 8 onto the board here on the clock.
So the Falcons need a quarterback. They also need some defensive back help, and that's where I went with them, giving them Christian Gonzalez out of the University of Oregon. I mean, the Falcons could go a number of different ways. I don't think they're really ready to close the book on Desmond Ridder. So I went with them going defense because, I mean, they need a lot of help on defense. So that's where I have them going, is Christian Gonzalez.
Yeah, and again, this is one of those that pick was made before the trade, because I think we were in agreement too that with Okudah now in Atlanta, that Atlanta probably doesn't go quarterback after just making that trade for a former first rounder that's still on his rookie deal.
And maybe they do. Maybe they just say, hey, look, try to beat us, right? Like, and we're going to have two guys out there and limit the options. And that's not a bad way to go about things either.
Right. Alrighty. So that moves I've got the Bears pick at number 9, and that moves us to on the clock here. Now the Bears traded down, right? They originally had the number 1, made the trade with Carolina. So they moved down to spot number 9 here, and lots of holes all across the Bears, especially along the defense. But I think they're going to do what they can here to try and protect their young quarterback and really give him a chance to continue to try and develop here. Going to take probably the most polished offensive lineman coming into this draft, and Peter Skoronski at number 9 there. And this is one of those that we could see them try and make the turn, make the corner here a little bit here as well. But definitely. They definitely kind of keeping the homegrown kid out of Northwestern there in Illinois.
Yeah, I like that. Keeping the homegrown kid there has a nice little story to it and able to kind of sell. Obviously, we're protecting our young quarterback. We're keeping this hometown kid. Like, good vibes, right? It's going to be hard for Chicago Bears fans to hate on this pick if that's the route they go.
Right. Kevin, that moves you and the Philadelphia Eagles at pick number 10 on the clock.
So the Eagles last year drafted a pair of national championship Bulldogs in Davis and Nakobe Dean. Nakobe Dean was relegated a little bit to some special teams, kind of developing because the Eagles had some other guys show up. But the Eagles organization did nothing but praise the preparation and the work ethic and go get 'em that Georgia and these two Georgia players had coming into the organization. And I say all this to lead up to the fact they are going to bring another Bulldog into the fold here, and they are going with Nolan Smith. So they're going to have 3 players from 2021-22 season, the championship team on their roster here as they continue to bolster their defense.
Yeah, I like the pick. That was one of those that I was hoping he was going to fall a little bit further there, and hope that you were going to go a different direction with the Eagles. But I like the pick. Alex, that moves you and the Tennessee Titans onto the clock here.
I believe that the Titans will be one of the teams that'll be chatting with Arizona in the lead up and on draft night about that pick number 3, because I do think that they want to figure out their quarterback position long term, and this is a draft that they could. So I believe that they trade up and make a selection of a quarterback, but that's not this exercise. This exercise is to pick it as it lies, and so I've gone with Jackson Smith and Jigba out of the Ohio State University, who lost to the eventual national champions.
Can't lose if you don't play. He got so scared he didn't even show up.
It was a hell of a football game, though. I'll tell you, sign me up for one of those every week, and I'm happy. So I go with Jackson Smith and Jigba. Not really a position of dire need for them, but if they're not going to go quarterback, I think they're going to try to get the most out of Ryan Tannehill and provide a little relief to that running back room. Which should read Derrick Henry. That's just the Derrick Henry running back room. And at least give that offense another option.
See, and this was one that I thought that there was definitely a different route that they would take on that one. Like the fact that they drafted wide receiver last year in the top 20 in Treylon Burks there. I didn't see that. I wouldn't see them taking another top 20 type of wide receiver in the draft class there, especially when they've got such a need along the offensive line and their identity has been running the ball so much. I figured for sure that you would have gone with a guy like a Paris Johnson, tackle guy that could also swing in and play guard, kind of deal there. Any thoughts around that one?
It's possible, but look, it takes O linemen. Like there are very few O linemen that are plug and play, right? Like that's very, very hard to get those guys to plug and play. So I think immediacy, and this is, you guys have heard me say this a ton. There's a mindset in football. It's a overpowering thought that the further you are away from the ball, when the ball is stationary at the line of scrimmage, the easier it is to get on the field. So that's where I think, you can plug in Jackson Smith and Jigba real quick, any wide receiver, but you can plug them in faster and make a difference.
Okay.
But O-line, look, O-line's not exactly a sexy pick, but it makes a lot of sense there. I just figured they'd go and help their ailing quarterback situation.
Right.
And we've seen teams go wide receiver back-to-back years in the first round.
Right.
The Lions, right? The Lions most notably, and they botched the hell out of it, right? Because they had 3 out of 4 years, they had a top 3 pick. And they went with a trio of receivers, and all of them were busts. So we've seen it before. The track record's not that great, but that's okay. And I agree with that. At some point in Tennessee, you're trying to get butts in seats. Right. That team was bad. Malik Willis is clearly not the answer. Like, you figured that out quick, right, and in a hurry after you drafted him and then had to play him when Tannehill went down. So I agree. For this purpose, it makes sense. But I agree with what you guys have been saying. And Tennessee is going to try and get creative on a way to move up. But, time will tell whether they put the right package together to be able to do that.
Right, I would agree with you. Question coming in here over on the YouTube. Adam asking, do y'all think the Bills could move up in the first round to grab Jackson Smith-Njigba or Bijan Robinson? I would say there's zero chance in my book that they do.
Adam, stick around because you're kind of on my thought process here. But stick around while we move through this while we move through the rest of this draft.
Absolutely. And we'll have the Bills pick coming up here as well. Again, guys, best way to support this independent podcast, head over to the YouTube channel, click that subscribe button, give us a big help there. That moves the Texans onto the clock here. I've got the pick for them. And, earlier in this draft, they selected Bryce Young with that second pick. They've still got a lot of needs out there. And this is one of those that Alex went through and sniped me a little bit because I was really hoping that Jackson Smith-Njigba fell right here to this number 12 spot. And so that was where I was, going to go there because Kevin took Nolan Smith for the Eagles at that 10 spot. So those are literally the two guys that I had kind of penciled in here. It's like, this is where they're going to go. This is the spot for them. And they went the 2 picks before, but there's another really good defensive edge, edge rusher out there out of the University of Iowa. Lucas Van Ness is, I think, going to come to the Texans here as the edge rusher, coming here and pick 12.
I like this. It has hints of J.J. Watt, right? And I don't want to put that type of career arc on this kid just yet, but I do think that he is a mold of, right? We'll see how he develops and comes through, but I like that pick. I could also see him going Quentin Johnson here. You were saying Jackson Smith. Quentin Johnson, just to pair up with Nico Collins, I think that would be dangerous. Another hometown kid, right? Going from TCU, down the road from Fort Worth down to Houston is something that I could see if they're really pushing weapons for Bryce Young or CJ Stroud, right? Depending on which way they go. But I like this pick overall, though.
All righty. And Kevin, that moves you and the New York Jets onto the clock here at pick 13.
Going Broderick Jones. They need help on their offensive line. Broderick Jones played guard before moving out to tackle, played right side and left side. earlier on in his career, did not allow a sack this year in the SEC, going through everything. So did really well up against the pass. We'll see if he's ready for that tackle spot or they decide to slide him inside to guard. But either way, I do think that he has the initial skill set to plug a hole for the Jets and become a day one starter somewhere on that offensive line, whether it's for Aaron Rodgers or anybody else that they have on their roster. Joe Flacco, if they bring him back, right?
Mike White's still there? I'm just kidding.
No, Mike White's not still there. Mike White's down in Florida. He's with Miami. So, they have to get their quarterback position figured out here. But I do think that whoever the quarterback is has a new offensive lineman in front of them to help keep their backside clean.
I like it. Really like that pick. Alex, you and the New England Patriots are sitting on the clock here at pick 14.
So their needs, obviously, tackle help, tight end help, and wide receiver help. So I decided to probably do the exact opposite of what Bill Belichick would do. And I went wide receiver and have gone with Zay Flowers out of Boston College to maybe try to give Mac Jones another option. I could see them, going towards an O lineman. There's as we talked about, when we did our position breakdowns, it's not really like a flashy tight end in this class. There is a road grader tight end who will hear his name later, but I don't know that necessarily fills the need that they need right away in New England. So I've gone with Zay Flowers.
Fair enough. Now, that was one of those that I saw that pick come through for the Patriots. And I'm glad that you prefaced that you'd probably do something opposite there, because Bill Belichick's track record on drafting wide receivers, and especially drafting wide receivers in the first round, yikes.
But if NFL coaches are anything, they are stubborn.
That's true. That's true. But very true. So hopefully
Washington to New England would be dirty, though.
Oh, yeah. It would
dirty,
be,
right? I mean, think of the way Belichick would try and use that and give some support to Ramondre and just to start off as an extra road grader there, and then being able to develop some of that artwork. And he doesn't have the hands that Gronk had, I don't believe, coming right out of college, but he's every bit, if not more, the blocker.
Right.
And then being able to kind of develop off of that. So that I think that could be dirty for New England if they did decide to go the tight end route.
Absolutely. Yeah, that'd be dirty nasty. All right, that moves myself and the Green Bay Packers into the 15th overall pick here. And this is one of those that, like, I almost went wide receiver here. Like, just from the standpoint to all the news, That'd
be so funny. It'd be so funny.
I almost did it just from the standpoint that they don't do it. And the fact that, that seems to have been a contention point between Aaron Rodgers and the organization for so long there. Almost did it. They also are in very dire need of tight end. This is a really good tight end class here, and I could see them going with an athletic tight end. You've got a couple of those guys like Luke Musgrave, Dalton Kincaid in this one that they could do very, very well there, would fit into what I think Matt LaFleur's system would be and really allow them to flourish there. But Green Bay has a propensity to draft defense in the first round here, and I think that's where they're going to go. I think they're going to go with a defensive line player, and I'm going to go with Miles Murphy, defensive lineman out of Clemson here. I do think that he kind of fits into what they're going to look to do there and kind of helps them on that defensive front there as well. Kevin, that moves you and the Washington Commanders onto the clock here at pick 16.
So a ton of mocks have the Commanders going Joey Porter Jr. here. I could see that happening, but I think they went with probably a little bit more of a pure shutdown corner to start their NFL career. So I have the Commanders going with Devon Witherspoon out of Illinois. He was really, really good for the Fighting Illini, or I think it's just the Illini now, all season long. Stacked up very well against the Big Ten receivers, including Ohio State's three-headed monster. So I think he's a guy that Washington, the Commanders, are going to be very happy they get, and another guy that has a better than likely shot of being a day one starter on the field for them to help plug a hole.
Yeah, I really like that pick there, and I've seen a lot of the same mocks that you have that shows like a Joey Porter going there. I've also seen them taking offensive line help with that one. A lot of other mocks there, but I really like that pick there, and I think that probably fits what Rivera is looking to do more so on the defensive side of the ball. Alex, that moves you and the Steelers on the clock at number 17.
That previous pick made my job so much easier because it wasn't Devon Witherspoon. It was Joey Porter Jr. Going to the Steelers. I think these guys, take the pick with them. Like,
this would be so good for so many different reasons. This would be so good.
Penn State guy going to Pittsburgh, like, he's got the family name. Like, it's just a lot of stuff that works there. And then on top of that, with the exercise, Kevin took the guy that I was going to go with, and I was like, I think they're going to go corner no matter what. So made my job easy.
Yeah, imagine that the Steelers going with defense on the first round.
Shocker.
So, right? I liked it. The next pick is going to be Detroit at number 18. And this was one of those that, as soon as it got to this point, I went, I got to do it. I got to do it. Like, the player and the coach just seemed so intertwined in my mind here as far as how they can utilize this player, and brings just kind of that grit and that mental toughness and just that overall road grader ability out of the tight end position. Of course, I'm talking about Darnell Washington to Detroit there. Dan Campbell, anybody that watched Hard Knocks last year, talks a lot about grit, talks a lot about the toughness, talks about all of that seemingly embodied in Darnell Washington in a position that Dan Campbell used to play. So I think that this is a slam dunk for them at this move.
Yeah, another team where he goes in and he doesn't have to. You can slowly develop his route tree, right? You can slowly develop that further, but being able to help set the edge and be that road grader for whether it's David Montgomery or DeAndre Swift. I like this move a lot, and I think you're absolutely right. He embodies what Dan Campbell wants out of his, front line there, whether it's, the front 6 or 7, depending on what format. But I don't think that you could find a clearer match just based off of personalities between the two.
Right. And Kevin, that moves you and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers onto the clock here at pick 19.
So Tampa, another team that's struggling with some offensive line help. They're salivating at this point. Like, I think Tampa Bay is just absolutely elated here because they're going to get Paris Johnson Jr. out of Ohio State to come in. Another guy, he can play tackle, he can play guard for them. I think he's probably going to fit into guard right away. We'll see how he develops and if they're able to kick him outside. But regardless of it, fills a hole. It helps the offensive line in Tampa Bay, which had starting, get a little older, people leaving, injuries, all that stuff. So Tampa Bay is elated to kind of have a new cornerstone there to help protect their quarterback.
I like that one. This is one of those that when we did it, I put the notes in there that Tampa Bay is excited that he fell this far, because I don't know that Paris Johnson actual draft day is going to make it this far down the draft. So for Tampa Bay to be able to pull him off or pull off this move and draft him at number 19, I think they are absolutely elated by this.
I was elated when we were doing our mock.
Right.
I was like, oh, he's still there? Like, this is a deal. This is easy.
Right. Alex, that puts you and the Seattle Seahawks on the clock here again.
So this is weird because of the way that we did the draft the way that it felt. I get to pick for the Seahawks for the second time in this draft. And so I was already able to have a little bit of insight into what they did in the first one. So they went defense first. I think they go offense with this one. And I have them taking Jordan Addison out of USC.
I could see this one, and it kind of makes sense from a standpoint if they're going to run a little bit more of an 11 personnel type of package where they move him more into the slots and they keep Tyler Lockett outside. They run DK outside there and give another weapon to Geno there. I could see that.
And that becomes a very, very formidable three-headed monster relatively quickly.
Yeah. Yeah, that very well could be. Yeah, they could also go some different moves there, but I like that pick overall for them right there. I like the fit. Jamie saying, "What's up, fellas?" Not much, Jamie. We're just doing some mocking. You know how it goes. Alrighty, that's gonna move myself and the Los Angeles Chargers onto the clock here at pick 21. The Chargers had a whole lot of issues last year stopping anybody from running the ball. The big run stopper, Jalen Carter, already taken and well up gone, or has already well been gone off the board. That's going to leave Callie Cansey off of the out of Pittsburgh, the defensive tackle, to help try and bolster up their run defense, try and slow down the run there and try and help them out on the defensive side of the ball. Kevin, that moves you and the Baltimore Ravens at pick number 22.
So I don't know if a team has been more successful in the first round than the Baltimore Ravens have been over the last 15 years. But nevertheless, here we go again. I'm going to try and screw it up for them. I'm going to have the Baltimore Ravens need some help on the defensive side of the ball. I'm having them take Cam Smith, defensive back out of South Carolina. Rangy defensive back to help compete with the likes of George Pickens and Deontay Johnson and obviously Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, right? Like there's a lot of good receivers in this division. Ravens are trying to keep up with the Joneses, if you will. But Cam Smith is a guy who's going to be able to go in and help provide them with some depth here to start. And I think he will I think he could start as the off corner. Like I don't think that it's as a clear-cut path as some might believe, but he'll definitely be involved in nickel and dime packages and possibly play the offside corner here to start the season.
Yeah, this is one that I like this move. Baltimore's defense was not near what we had seen it in years past. Really kind of given up a lot of ground last year, more so than what we've think of a lot of times when we think of Baltimore and their team makeup there. So I like the move on to defense here and especially there to try and shore up the passing game a little bit. Alex, that moves you and the Minnesota Vikings onto the board or onto the clock here at pick 23.
So it used to be that you could bet the farm that the Vikings were going to take a defensive back in the first round, no matter what need or position that they needed to fill. They were going to take a defensive back in the first round. That was the old regime. New regime has come in, but I still think that they go defensive back here. And I have gone with Brian Branch out of Alabama. And Derek, you brought up a very excellent point about last year they took Lewis Sine, and that's another safety that they took. So going back-to-back first-round safeties could be illogical, but Harrison Smith is getting old, and he's getting older, and he's not going to last forever. So I think you bring in a good talent, coach him up, you get him some time on special teams, you get him some playing time in a nickel or a dime situation, and eventually he becomes the heir apparent to a position that Harrison Smith has had locked down for the better part of, at least the last half decade, if not longer.
Yeah, I think there's a good chance that Branch ends up starting over Lewis Sine, just right off the bat. So Lewis Sine had a great run to end his collegiate career at Georgia as they capped off that national title game. Injury plagued all last season, right? So that's the hardest thing that Minnesota had to try and evaluate here is, is this the exception or is this the rule? Scene did stay pretty healthy through college, but I think Branch is a little bit more polished coming out. So it's really in that year separation, does Lewis Scene develop and does he understand his role for the Vikings that much better that he can keep Deion Branch into nickel formations, or being able to give Harrison, a bit more of a breather, so that way they have him all season long and he doesn't kind of, fade out towards the end of the year. But I like this pick just because it provides some depth. Your safeties, if both these guys do end up working out and playing off of each other well, your back end of your defense is now covered here for the next 4 years at least.
Yeah. It's not that I didn't, that I disliked the pick. It was one of those that a little surprising seeing them draft the two safeties back to back there with that high of draft capital on it. But I could certainly see them doing it, and the logic that both of you went through certainly makes a lot of sense there. So, all right, that moves myself and the Jacksonville Jaguars onto the clock here with the 24th overall pick here. Let's go ahead and take a look. It was Dalton Kincaid, tight end out of Utah, big production guy out of Utah. This is a move that I think they're looking more towards the future on this one, right? Like we typically see tight ends needing to come in and take 2 to 3 years to fully develop on this one. The Jaguars tagged Evan Ingram this offseason as the tight end role. One of those I don't think that you're going to see them necessarily put together a long-term deal here. Doug Peterson loves himself some tight ends and some athletic tight ends there. So definitely a guy that fits into the scheme, pass catching type of guy. Like this move makes a lot of sense to me on this one. And the tea leaves have spoken to me, I guess it's a good way of saying it. Any other thoughts on that one?
That's a pretty good assessment of Doug Peterson, right? Like he was the guy who drafted Dallas Goedert. He inherited a Zach Ertz, but they utilized both of those guys very well in the process.
I think the position is right. I do think that it's Michael Mayer who would be the one that goes, just because he's a bit more polished as that blocking tight end to start. Because with Evan Ingram does not block well. So to be able to put these guys in and really kind of develop one, you need to have one of them block. You can't just stick them both out there and let defensive ends fly past them. So I would lean Mayer, but I think the position group makes sense. Like it's a position of need, another weapon for Trevor Lawrence as the Jags continue to develop and try and surround their young quarterback with lots of fun toys.
Right. But it could come down to as well, right? If we're all thinking same position group, could come down to, something as simple as the interview process and how these guys think the personalities are going to work out in the locker room, all that kind of stuff. So I could see Myers playing there too. I like that call as well. Kevin, that moves you and the New York Football Giants onto the clock here at the 25th pick.
The Giants need help outside, right? They were abysmal last year. They had a cast of characters trying to come in and run through things. And, Sterling Shepard went down. Kenny Golladay just completely stole from that organization after they gave him a long-term contract. Darius Slayton is meh. Kadarius Toney is injured and then traded. So they got to replenish the well here. Quentin Johnson, wide receiver out of TCU.
I like that one. And this one certainly fits a need for them. The big body, speedy kind of guy that can play the outside. I really like this fit for it. And I think that a guy like Brian Daboll can certainly utilize Quentin Johnson to his full potential there.
Yeah, I should be able to come up with some really interesting wrinkles for him to help Daniel Jones have some sort of consistent rapport with a young budding receiver because the Giants just do not have a lot on the outside. Like it's just not a very attractive unit. So you just signed your quarterback. So now you got to put some toys around him, right? And what better way to do that is, young contract-friendly wide receivers to figure out which one's going to stick out with your quarterback here for the next 5, 6, 7 years.
Absolutely. Alex, that's going to move you and them Dallas Cowboys onto the clock at pick 26.
And this goes back to Adam's question that we had earlier. I think that the Bills will be pretty upset about this pick. Derek disagrees with me, but I think that the Bills will be pretty upset because if this guy fell down to them, to Buffalo, holy cow, that would be something. But I have the Cowboys going with Bijan Robinson out of Texas. I think there's just too much. Like, Bijan Robinson is the most polished running back in this class. He is a workhorse. They just got rid of one of those, so you don't have to drastically alter your identity if you bring in Bijan Robinson. So I think he fits the mold. I think that Jerry Jones can't help himself and goes ahead and takes him.
Yeah, maybe I could see that. I really would think that if so Kevin just said on the last pick for Jacksonville, the Dalton Kincaid, that he thought that it would be a Michael Mayer there. I think that if Michael Mayer is still here, the Cowboys are all over that, hitting the smash button and moving on there. But I could absolutely see them going tight end in this first round over a running back there. But the Bijan story makes a lot of sense, right? Homegrown kid, out of the University of Texas, going to the Cowboys. You've got it where, the running back room in Dallas right now, a little ambiguous from the standpoint that Tony Pollard coming off of injury, Zeke's no longer there. So I could see that one come to play there as well. Any other thoughts on that one, Kevin?
No, cosign. I think it's the most Cowboy pick you could possibly think of in the first round.
I had to put my Jerry Jones hat on. It wasn't a space that I wanted to live in for very long, but
I think it's the most Cowboy thing you could do. As far as the Bills go, right, based off the question earlier, I think Bijan's counterpart is actually a better fit for what Buffalo does.
Yep. I would agree with that. So, and that's actually going to move the Bills pick number 27 and myself onto the clock here. And when Alex made that Bijan pick, he did put in there, the Bills are going to be really upset about the Dallas selection. I said, I don't think so, because the Bills have a lot of other needs there, right? And we just saw them. They spent a fair bit of draft capital over the last few years drafting running backs, not necessarily panning out. They went out and acquired Naheem Hines last year. Didn't really utilize him at all during that. They went and spent early draft capital last year to bring in James Cook. Like, I don't think that they're a marquee running back is in their plans there, with as much as they want to throw the ball and as much as that identity is set up. But what they do need help with is help on the offensive line, and there's certainly some help out there that's still available. And I think that the Bills are going to go on the offensive line here, take a guy named Darnell Wright out of the University of Tennessee, big road grader type of guy, and can help protect Josh Allen. If they actually want to try and run the ball, he's got the ability to get some run block in there as well. But that's the kind of the route I think they're going to go, is on the offensive line.
Very good. So next up, the Cincinnati Bengals, another team that needs a little bit of help here in the secondary, right? These are some luxury picks at the back end of the first round, if you will, because they had such a good season. Another team, right, depending on how this Joe Mixon deal plays out, another team that, if they are so inclined, could make a big push to try and get in front of the Cowboys if they are in love with Bijan. I don't see that happening, but stranger things have happened in the NFL, and the Bengals typically do not trade their first-round picks. Like them and the Cleveland Browns are traditionally two teams that just kind of hold on to them and they see what comes their way. So with that being said, I have the Bengals taking Deonte Banks out of Maryland, another long, rangy defensive back from the Big Ten. Fits that weather perfectly, right? You're just sliding to the west just a little bit, but familiar with the area, and a guy that could jump in probably in nickel and dime formations to start with, but we'll see how his camp would go.
I like it, and it certainly fits the need, right? Like, the Bengals need a little bit of help on that defensive side of the ball, and I think he certainly fits that, right? Like they need help on especially in the defensive backfield. So I think that's probably a pretty perfect pick for them, actually.
The only other guy, since he's not, I don't see him on here. No, I don't see him on it. The only other guy that I thought maybe is your offensive tackle out of Oklahoma.
Anton Harrison?
Yes.
Yeah, I could see
that's
them.
Another guy that I think could do that because he's dual positioned, right? Like
right.
You could inside or outside, so that would be another possibility. But they went defense for me.
Yeah, and I think that's probably where they go, is on the defensive side of the ball as well. But I could see it if Anton Harrison's still there, right? Like fills a hole. They've got several of holes that kind of needed to fill on that offensive line. So I could see it there. Alex, that moves you and the Saints. Pick 29 on the clock.
So the Saints just signed Derek Carr to that 4-year deal, right? And they paid him a healthy amount of money for that. But what if it wasn't Las Vegas that was the issue? What if it was Derek Carr that was the issue? What if Derek Carr's getting a little bit too long in the tooth? So that's where I've gone with the Saints, that they can inherit some competition in that quarterback room and provide themselves some insurance and get an older, if you will, quarterback and gone with Hendon Hooker out of Tennessee. I think at this point, I think that it will be either as a trade bait or as, insurance against Derek Carr, because his deal will be a heck of a lot friendlier than Derek Carr's is. And maybe you can, develop him, see what you got. If Carr goes down at any point and you figure out what he is, you can cut bait and move on. So I've gone with Hendon Hooker there.
At the end of Hendon Hooker's rookie contract, he could be 32 years old.
He could be.
Well, yeah, that was one of those that you put that one down there, and I was scratching my head on that one a little bit. But I can see where you're kind of going there. But personally, I think they're going to go a different route for sure, right? Like they need help along their defensive line. They need help in the defensive back. They actually need help all along the defensive side of the ball there.
Yeah, they probably should go defense. If anybody from New Orleans happens to be watching this, just do the opposite of what I've picked for you, and it'll probably work out better. But I like Hendon Hooker there.
Fair enough. All right, so that moves myself and the Philadelphia Eagles at pick 30 onto the clock. And the Eagles, right, they already took the draft pick earlier. They went defensive line there, took Nolan Smith that Kevin drafted for them, kind of filling in some of that edge rush there, a little bit on the defensive line things. They've still got some holes all along the defensive unit in linebacker and in safety. So I took a guy here that has the ability to play sideline to sideline as a linebacker. Did some edge rushing in college there. One of the folks when we put the profile video out there actually came through and said if he's got, if he's quick enough, he could actually probably play some safety, which I thought was an interesting thought. I don't know that I necessarily subscribe to him being able to play safety at the next level, but I think that he'll be a pretty good linebacker and a pretty good pair with a guy like Nakobe Dean out there and kind of all behind that defensive front that they've put together. Drew Sanders, linebacker out of Arkansas, I think is going to be where the Philadelphia Eagles go for pick 30.
Look at those little chicken wings for arms.
Maybe he played in the SEC.
Maybe it's just a picture, right? But they do need the help, right? Like, right. I mean, they lost a lot of people across that defensive squad, right? It wasn't just one level. So, I mean, I think it's very clear that one or both of these Eagles picks are going to be defensive players. Like I feel like they're pretty set offensively. They like where they're at. So it's offensive linemen or anywhere across the defense for the Eagles in this draft.
Right. And that brings us to Kevin to round it out with the Chiefs at pick 31 here to end it. You're on the clock.
Chiefs are going with some more defensive help. why not, right? Just continue to add to the embarrassment of riches. But the Chiefs have done a very good job the last few seasons, right? They're kind of loosey-goosey with the defense at the start of the season, and as it goes on, they just continue to ratchet things down, and it showed very well in the playoffs, as everybody saw. So Brian Bresee out of the University of Clemson to kind of help with that defensive line and give them a little bit more beef up front to kind of fine-tune for another playoff run, undoubtedly.
Yeah, and that was one that, had you not taken Nolan Smith right there at the 10th, Brian Bresee was a guy I was looking at heavily for that pick 30 to the Eagles there to help out with that defensive line there a little bit as well. But now it's the fact that they'd already gone that way. Like, I like the pick. I think that he'll do very well, and I think he'll fit with what the Chiefs are looking to do very, very well there. Alex, any thoughts on that one?
No, I think that it makes a lot of sense.
All righty. Well, guys, any other thoughts overall on the draft? Any burning questions that are left remaining for you?
I don't know about questions. I do think that I think mine are more just notable names or where they went, right? Like, I don't think that Paris Johnson goes so late, right? Like, I don't think they go in the back half to Tampa Bay. I think he's gone beforehand. I don't think Quentin Johnson's the fourth wide receiver off the board either. No. Like, I think he's probably higher up that list. And whether it's in front of, Addison or Flowers or in Jigba in some cases, depending on, again, how teams really feel about these guys. But I don't see him 4. Like, I really see him being, third worst case scenario, but we'll see kind of how some things shake out. And Michael Mayer, like we talked about, right? Like, I would have him higher up on the board. I am pretty shocked that Big O is the first tight end off the board, but I think that spot to Detroit makes sense, right? We talked about that. So every year there's a couple snubs in the first round, right? Some guys fall that we don't expect. Some guys sneak in there who, a team really liked and they just didn't feel like they had a comparable replacement for that player in later rounds. And so this is kind of where it gets a little interesting in some of these positions. But overall, I mean, I don't think that any of these teams would be completely distraught if this is how the draft board fell, right? And we might change a thing or two based off of personal opinion, but if this is how the board fell, I think we'd be talking about it that Thursday night and going, well, it makes sense. Like, we don't see any glaring like WTF moments, and we don't see any team that completely botched the first round, and we just kind of move on and see what the rest of the draft has to offer.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Alex, anything for you that stood out there that we hadn't already talked about?
No, and I do think though that we do this exercise again. Obviously, I think there's probably a few that I would change that I selected that I don't know that that they necessarily make a ton of sense, but they work, right? Like, they're not awful. And there's a few teams that I think are going to be moving. I think that the way that the draft sits as we record this on April 11th is probably not the way that it goes down 2.5 weeks from now. So I think we're still going to see some movement, and I think it's going to be for QB needy and QB hungry teams.
Yeah, I would agree with that as well. I think that you're going to see a lot of moves happen draft night. I don't know that we see a lot of jockeying for position necessarily before the draft, but I think come draft night, we're going to see some moving and grooving go on with some of these picks for sure.
Because why? Because the NFL they love the element of surprise, right? You never want to let the other teams know what you're doing, and that goes straight to the front office, from field to front office. That is a mentality that they have. So I think that I agree with you, Derek. I think that we are going to see a lot of stuff on actual draft night more than we will in the 2.5 weeks leading up to it.
Yeah.
I do think it's interesting though, because we went into last year's draft thinking that there would be up
Not
to five
much.
or six moves, right? And there wasn't any action on draft night to speak of, or at least round one.
Right.
Well, there was a fair bit. You had the Commanders moving, you had the Ravens moving, you had Detroit
But it was
moving
all
back up.
end, like it was back end.
Right, you didn't have like the
middle
big
back end, right? Like
Yeah.
there wasn't that top 10 mover. Like all the first 15 draft picks held serve.
Yeah.
I do think that part of that is just what teams are asking is compensation, right?
Mhm.
Like it is costing you dearly to be able to jump up and get your guy, especially inside that top 10, let alone the top 5 or 3, depending on what you need for quarterback. So you have to be prepared to give up that much. And it at the end of the day, some teams can shake it and feel like they're able to make it work, and others don't.
Yeah.
But the Eagles specifically, right? They had two picks in the first round last year, right? They had 2 picks this year. Like the Niners had loads of draft picks up until now. The Dolphins had loads of draft picks until they lost. That's why there's only 31, right? The Dolphins lost their pick due to Tom Brady tampering. But otherwise, the Dolphins would have this one, and it would have been what 7? Is it 5 first-round picks in 3 years? Is that what that?
Because they picked twice in the top 5 too this year.
So I mean, they're coveted, and so teams continue to ask high prices for them. So as much as we want to see that action, that's a big jump for Tennessee, right?
Yeah,
for Tennessee to get up there, that is a big jump, right? The Raiders would have to be in love with a quarterback if they don't think that one of them is going to fall at 7. Like you'd have to actively make that move, but you got to find a partner. And as much, Arizona does seem to fit though, because they need so many pieces, but they're still trying to recover from the DeAndre Hopkins deal.
Right.
Yeah.
Like so, scorned lovers type thing, right? Oh, we learned from that, so we're just not going to do it anymore. Now we're just going to, stay here and we'll take who we get.
Yeah. A couple of comments and questions came in here. Let's hit those up. Jamie was saying off topic, you made an elite dynasty trade today, trading away the 106, 206, and 2024 seconds for Devonta Smith, Pickett, and a 2024 first in a super flex.
I like that. I mean, Devonta Smith is probably going to be more of an immediate impact in a high-powered offense than what you would get at 106 because Bijan's gone, right? So at the 106, the quarterbacks are gone and Bijan's gone. So you're looking at Addison, Quentin Johnson, Zay Flowers, like one of those. I'm happy with Devonta Smith. I mean, he's a top 15 receiver at the end of the year last year. So I'm okay with that. Pickett gets you a young quarterback who seemed to start clicking at the end of last year. And then a 2024 first, you can kind of see how things develop and hopefully the team you traded with does poorly, right? And it's a high first-round pick, and I think you're off to the races. I like the trade.
Yeah, I would agree. Jamie was also saying in best ball, it's easy to get the combo of Evans, Ingram, Ridley, Kirk, just getting 2 of those pass catchers. Yeah, I mean, I could certainly see it. And in best ball, you're stacking them and trying to shoot for the ceiling on those things. So I could certainly see that one. And then he was saying Paris Campbell season on the Giants. And as much as we once upon a time loved Paris Campbell, I don't know that I can continue hopping on that one and waiting for that train to leave the station.
He who shall not be named. The problem with Paris Campbell is he's essentially Darius Slayton. Like, they're almost the exact same guy. So Campbell's going to have to show something a bit different.
Except one of them stays on the field healthy.
And
a lot more.
Well, yeah, but he can't catch a ball either. So you're on the field. You're available, but you can't catch. You have bricks for hands.
So, anyway, Anyway, alrighty, guys. Well, Alex, you brought up a very interesting question, and we're going to hit that one up here. And your question was the over under the number of Smiths drafted in the first round, and you set the line at 3.5 for us.
Yeah, I did. And that is because as we were going through this, I noticed, a fair amount of Smiths were going. We had Nolan Smith going. We had Cam Smith going. And then we also had Jackson Smith and Jigba going. There's a real possibility that we could see 4 Smiths go in the first round. Probably unlikely. But I think it's fair that we would expect at least 3, right? So that's probably a fun little side bet action that you could have with some of your buddies. It's the over/under number of Smiths that would go in the first round. I would feel comfortable taking the under if it was set at 3.5, and I would feel very comfortable taking the over if it was set at 2.5. So,
all right. Well,
but that does get us into what we're going to talk about next week, right, Derek?
2 weeks from now, we're going to hit that one up.
2 weeks from now.
And all of that. Kevin, we're not going to let you off the hook. You got to call your shot over under on the 3.5 Smiths.
Under.
All right. I think I'm going to join you both on the under side of that as well. So, Alex, the interesting thing would have been to just set the line straight at 3 and see what happens.
3?
Yeah.
Under.
Still under. Okay.
Now, not only because more could go wrong than right.
That's
Right.
fair.
That's fair. Yeah. I could see that. Yeah.
Yeah, and that'd be the only reason I'd play the under is Cam Smith specifically, right? Like, I mean,
Yeah, that's a back
the other
half,
two,
maybe.
we feel pretty good about that, but he's a back half guy. Like, if an offensive lineman happens to fall and
Yeah.
pushes him down, or if a team wanted someone who's more of a zone guy than a man guy, just depending on their scheme. Like, there's so many things that play into this that we don't even start to breach. With this being a fantasy show, that there's more things that could slide, specifically Cam Smith, out of that first round and be at the top end of day 2 than have him stay in the first.
Agreed. So yeah, Alex kind of alluded to some of that, what you can expect in the coming weeks here. So programming notes, I guess. Let's hit that up. Next week, we're going to go through mock draft 2.0, and that one will have trades similar formats as what you saw tonight. We're also going to start getting into the big boards next week for dynasty rookie drafts here coming up. We'll get our big boards, our final big boards out there as far as what we're looking at for fantasy players for dynasty before we know landing spots, and then we'll see what those landing spots look like after the draft there. And then 2 weeks from now, we're going to hit up something we've never done before. We're each going to run through our mock drafts there and get heavily into some of the props and some of the betting type of deals on draft night there. And then, of course, on the 27th, we're doing the first round live draft reaction show like we've done every year for the last few years here, and we've got special guests coming on. Don't want to miss it. Make sure that you're tuning in. Best place to go, still head over to that YouTube channel, click that subscribe button, show us all the love there. That's the best way to support this independent podcast is to subscribe to the YouTube channel. Plus, we're releasing a ton of content every day leading up to the draft with player profile videos for these prospects heading in here as well. And then you can hit us up on all the socials, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok at Good Old Boys FF. Gentlemen, final thoughts out there.
A ton of content heading y'all's way, right? Derek just covered all of it. Like, subscribe. That way you get the little pop-up on your iPhone or Android. Tune in. We love to hear the comments. And as always, thank you for the support. It is greatly appreciated.
Double thumbs up. I like it. He's Kevin. He's Alex. I'm Derek. Y'all have a good one. Be safe. Toodaloos.